introduce the background of this case first. As you know, this is a company in Europe. Let me give you some general profile of Vegetail. It's a European company in the brewery industry. What kind of products are made by the brewery company? Beer, right? Yeah, all kinds of beer. It's different from the winery. Wineries basically make wines, and the brewery make beers. Some companies make both, but it's pretty rare. In European countries, most of the companies tend to focus on just one type of beverage. Although within that category, you can still diversify into different products. Now, let me ask you about a very basic common sense. In Europe, in general, which country is the major consumption country of beer? In other words, people in which European country tend to drink most beer? Do you have any general idea?
I guess it is Germany.
That's right. Yeah, German people are famous for drinking beer. They love beer. They drink beer for lunch, for dinner, and they care about all kinds of tastes of beer. And in Germany, no matter men or women, actually, it's not just the men. Women also like to drink beer. It's a very important part of German life. But generally speaking, in Central or Northern Europe, or Eastern Europe, probably as well, people are more likely to drink more beer than wine. But in Southern Europe, like France, Portugal, or Spain, people tend to drink more wine than beer. Of course, you can find both products commonly drunk by people in every country. And this company, Vegetail, was headquartered in Rotterdam, Holland. As you know, Holland is a Central European country. It's adjacent to Germany, France. Therefore, in a sense, you could find both a very strong beer culture and wine culture in the Netherlands. But this company specializes in the production of beer. Certainly, in Holland, there are a lot of beer drinkers, just like Germany. I suspect that beer is more popular drink than wine in the Netherlands, although there are also a lot of wine drinkers in Holland as well. I don't know how much you have heard about this country, but when people say "go Dutch," what does that imply? It's a kind of idiom or slang commonly used in the United States. When people go for lunch or dinner, they say, "Let's go Dutch." It means 50-50. I pay for my share of the meal, you pay for your meal of the at the meal. So that reflects a very important cultural characteristics of Dutch people. They like to treat each other equally, and they care about being fair. So even when they go to lunch or dinner, they are less likely to treat each other. Although I would not say it's not impossible that one person would buy lunch or dinner for the other party, but in most of the cases, if you are just colleagues or friends who go to lunch or dinner together in Holland, it's a kind of a tacit agreement that each one of us just pay half of the meal cost. That's why there's such a phrase called "Go Dutch." But this company, even though it's originated in Holland, it has expanded to Spain and France. As you know, both Spain and France have a very strong Latin culture, and people there historically drink more wine than beer. But based on the case description, the market demand for beer in both countries has been growing. In other words, even though the Southern Europeans also get into the habit of drinking more beer. So that means there's a growth potential for the beer products in Southern Europe. And that's the reason why Vegetail has decided to enter that market. They first expanded their market to Spain by acquiring a brewery in Spain. And then they found some breweries available for acquisition in France and decided to enter the French market as well. Later on, we'll talk about their experience in Spain, which is not very successful. But they did a better job in France. Interhold is a holding company or the parent company of Vegetail. In other words, Vegetail is not the only company owned by Interhold. Interhold also owns the other subsidiary, actually more than one subsidiary in different countries. And it's nothing uncommon for a company to create a holding company. After they grow to a certain size, they have diverse products, and they create one subsidiary for each product, and then have a holding company which would only take care of the financial and the management control of the subsidiaries. And they later those subsidiaries to handle the production, marketing functions. That makes the life easier for top management, because instead of having to spend the time and energy on a wide variety of products, now they just focus on the finance and try to control the resources in a centralized manner. But our focus today is just on Vegetail, which is actually quite a famous brand name in Europe in the brewery industry. They also have a subsidiary called Inter-HRC, which is the distribution arm of its products. Well, first, let me ask you, what does HRC stand for? There's a reason why it's called Inter-HRC. Inter, of course, represents probably the meaning that it's an international company. But the choice of HRC is not arbitrary. What does it stand for? It's actually spelled out of my handout. I explained that in the case study notes. And probably you will not be surprised when you find out what the answer is. What are they? Actually, they stand for three. These three letters stand for three different businesses. H stands for hotel, R stands for restaurants, and C stands for catering service. And it makes sense to group these three businesses together because all three types of businesses, they need to buy beer in large quantity. So if you could create a distribution company that sell beer to the restaurants, to the hotels, to the catering service, then you get a steady business. The market demand is guaranteed for your beer. But there's a catch there. When you create this kind of a distribution company as your subsidiary, can you just ask that company to distribute only Vegetail beer? Why? Why wouldn't it make sense? Yes?
Because the world is a world of variety. So it doesn't, if one person prefers Vector beer, maybe the other person prefers another brand. So you need to mix it, because then you're not being profitable because you're only specializing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the reason why you cannot just ask them to sell your own brand name products, even though they're the companies owned by Vector. No matter you are a hotel owner, restaurant owner, or catering service, you want a variety, as you point out. You don't just want to purchase a Vector. Some of your customers, you have your own customers in the restaurant, in your hotel. You want to offer a wide variety of beer for those customers. That's why if Inter-HRC only distribute the beer made by Vegetail, it would not have enough business. In order to get the economy of scale and generate enough revenue, they do need to carry the brand name beers of their competitors, even though the other companies would compete with them for the market share. You cannot say, no, I will not distribute your product, because then you would irritate the consumers who want to have choices available. So that's a very important point that we need to keep in mind. Let's take a look at the challenge faced by Vector. The first challenge they encountered was the management failure with its Spanish subsidiary. As it's mentioned in this case, when they acquired the Spanish brewery, what did they do? What kind of change did they introduce? Based on the case description or your handout. Well, a couple of things that really explain why they did not succeed in Spain. The first thing, actually the first mistake made by them was they fired the current manager and replaced with expatriate managers dispatched from their headquarters office. And unfortunately, these managers, they are all Dutch managers. They don't speak a Spanish language, and they don't understand the Spanish culture. Although you can always hire interpreters or translators to help bridge the communication, but the communication barrier would always be there if you don't understand the local culture and you don't speak the local language. So they made a lot of mistakes in Spain because of the lack of understanding of the local culture. And eventually they had to bring those managers back to Holland and start hiring local managers who really understand the Spanish market. What's another mistake made by them in Spain? It's also a big mistake. Did they keep Inter-HRC, or did they get rid of HRC in Spain. That's right. They got rid of Inter HRC. Why is that a big mistake? Well, Inter HRC is an international company as well, even though it's just a subsidiary of Vectel, it's huge as well. And the employees of Inter HRC, naturally, they are local Spanish people. So they truly know the local language and the local culture, and they are acquainted with those hotels and restaurants or catering services. And when you divested Inter HRC in Spain, that means you have to depend on the other independent wholesalers or retailers to sell beer for you. They have no obligation to sell Vectel beer in Spain, unless you provide them with very lucrative profit margin, give them special deal. Otherwise, you would not get any special treatment. By contrast, if you have your own distribution channel in Spain, it's much easier to sell the beer products in Spain. That's why it's another big mistake. But these two mistakes are kind of intertwined. Probably, well, let me ask you, which one of these two mistakes is a more serious mistake, in your opinion? Which one is more serious? Replacing the local managers with Dutch managers is a bigger mistake, or getting rid of Inter HRC is a bigger mistake? The first one or the second one?
I think the first one.
You are right, the first one. Well, after they made the first mistake by replacing the local manager with the Dutch manager, they were totally naive about the market. Therefore, they made the decision to divest Inter HRC. Imagine if they did not replace the local managers with Dutch managers, and later those managers continue to run the brewery in Spain. Do you think the local managers would decide to divest Inter HRC, cut their tie? No. They knew how important, the local managers would understand how important it is to have your own distributor under your control. So that's why once they made the first mistake, it also led to the second mistake. And with those two mistakes, it's very hard for them to turn around the situation in Spain. But these are good lessons to learn, because after they enter the French market, they realized that they made these kind of mistakes, and they became smarter, they became wiser when dealing with the French subsidiary. Well, the second challenge faced by Vectel is converting Vectel France to a full-line beer company. Initially, they just make the Vectel brand name beer, which is okay. The name recognition is good, but it's just one product. And there are people who prefer to drink a specialty wine. When we say specialty wine, it means the wine is usually has special taste. It's brewed with different process, and therefore the taste is also different from the generic brand name beer. In the United States, for instance, Budweiser is a famous beer. They have a #1 market share. But there are also lots of specialty breweries in America that make special kind of beer which tastes very different from Budweiser beers. But those breweries are smaller, the quantity of production is also smaller because not everyone like to drink a specialty beer. However, those beer lovers, they are very picky about the taste. If they just drink Budweiser, they think the taste is just too bland. It's not strong enough, not tasty enough. Therefore, they would rather drink some specialty wines, which are not so specialty beers. Specialty beers that are not so famous in terms of brand name, but the taste is stronger, and they like that kind of taste. The same thing is true for Wagtail. Wagtail might be famous and generally liked by the public. Most beer drinkers may feel happy about a Wagtail beer, but there are also some beer drinkers, they prefer specialty beer, and therefore they also want to offer those specialty beers. In addition, there is another category of beer that would cater to lower income, middle income, low income people. They are very cheap. They may not taste as good, but the price is really low and more affordable. And in some countries, like the United States, it's called the store brand beer. The distributor or some retailing chain, they just buy large quantity of beer. The price is very cheap. It's not as tasty as the brand name beer, but it's okay. For those low-income people, they also want to drink beer, but they cannot afford buying expensive beers. So that segment of market is also appealing. Wagtail wanted to participate in that market segment as well. So in a sense, they want to develop a variety of beers that cater to high income, middle income, and low income consumers in France. And that's not easy. In order to accomplish that, they need to make additional acquisition. The third challenge is the acquisition of Schaefer Brewery, which was a very attractive target of acquisition, but it had a very strong union organization. And those union workers, of course, they are afraid of losing their jobs if they are acquired by Wagtail. So that's why it took them a long time to go through the negotiation. But now, let me shift your attention a little bit to the two key persons. Jean-Pierre Corbet, who is a board member of Wagtail headquarters office. Excuse me. He's actually a French man who helped Wagtail acquire the French subsidiary. So Jean-Pierre Corbet is French, not Dutch. The other key person is Job Hamilton. Hamilton is the board member of the headquarters office. And initially, he was the chief executive of Wagtail France. However, he realized that this company is top heavy. They really don't need two persons to take care of the management of this subsidiary from the top. So eventually, he handed the leadership responsibility to Jean-Pierre Corbet, who is a local French manager who understands the French culture much better. Well, why do I highlight this point? Well, one thing special about Jabba Hamilton is even though he is Dutch, he's not French. He can speak fluent English and also speak French language. Therefore, he had no language barrier. He could communicate with Jim Perry and the other French manager without any problem. Also, he understands how important it is to understand the local culture, to have a knowledge about the French culture and the French society. And he realized he is just an outsider from Holland. He'd better let a local manager to manage this company. So he made that concession. He let Jim Perry take over, but he continued to provide the help needed by Bechtel France from the headquarters office in Rotterdam, Holland. So that also explains why they could achieve success eventually in acquiring Schaeffer. Now, what lesson can you learn from this case? Let's think about both the strategic decision made by the top managers, as well as the characteristics of the leaders and the managers. Do you think Bechtel could be so successful without these two key persons? Probably the answer is no. Both of them are very important for the success of Bechtel France, particularly Jim Perry, who is a French manager. Let me direct your attention to the cultural differences between these countries. There's a handout in your hand with the comparison of cultural value based on Hofstede's value survey module. If you look at the table, you see 5 different cultural dimensions were identified. The first one is power distance. It means to what extent you accept the difference in terms of power between the superior and the subordinate. For instance, in Asian countries, the power distance tends to be larger. They think it's legitimate for the top manager to have immense power, enormous power over their subordinate. They would not challenge the authority of the power. That's a PDI, power distance. The second dimension is individualism. It's self-explanatory. Some countries are individualistic, some are collectivistic. The third one is masculinity, which really reflects the importance of material satisfaction or the importance of money, achievement to individuals in the country. So a masculine country means most of the people care about making more money, pursue material satisfaction, and advance in their career. Whereas a low masculinity country, they care more about the quality of life itself rather than making more money or achieving higher status in the organizational hierarchy. Uncertainty avoidance is another dimension. I don't have to explain this term. You probably know what it means. To what extent would you try to avoid uncertainty? So if you have high uncertainty avoidance, that means you are conservative. You don't want to take a risk. And the fifth dimension of Hofstede's cultural value survey is long-term orientation. People in different countries have different framework of time. Some of them tend to focus on what's going to happen in the near future and care more about the short-term interest. Some people in some countries, they care about the long-term benefits and they like to think about what's going to happen in the long run. Now, if we compare first the Netherlands and Spain and France in terms of power distance, which country has the highest power distance?
France.
France. Yeah. That means if you manage the organization in France, you could follow a more authoritarian approach, and your subordinates are less likely to challenge the authority of the manager. Whereas if you look at Holland, it's much lower in terms of power distance. That means people are more egalitarian. They think that even though you are the manager, I'm just an employee, I report to you, that does not mean as a manager you can do whatever you like. We are still equal to a certain extent. Earlier on I mentioned Go Dutch, that reflects this spirit. Apparently in Holland, when you manage people, you need to pay more respect to your subordinates because they would not accept too much power from their manager. That's one thing you need to keep in mind. Individualism, if you look at the comparison of these three countries, the Netherlands has the highest level of individualism. So it's more similar. That country is more similar to America or maybe UK in terms of the individualism or collectivism. Where the France has the lowest level, well, actually the highest level. No, sorry. Spain has the lowest level. Spain has the lowest level of individualism. The implication is that if you manage the company in Spain, people tend to emphasize the group spirit. They tend to act collectivistically. They like to make a group decision. And France is between the Netherlands and Spain. Masculinity shows another striking difference between Holland and the other two countries. In Holland, the masculinity level is the lowest. But in France, masculinity is the highest. That implies if you want to motivate your French employees, you need to probably offer them better salary or opportunity for promotion and challenge them for career advancement. Whereas if you manage Dutch employees, most of them probably more likely care about living a comfortable life. Money is not the only thing important to them. That also has implication for the managers. If we move to uncertainty avoidance, apparently both French and Spanish people are more risk averse because they have higher level of uncertainty avoidance, whereas the Netherlands has the lowest level of uncertainty avoidance. That means Dutch people are risk-free. That's right. They are risk takers. They are more willing to take a risk. And finally, the fifth dimension is also very important. Long-term orientation. we found out that Dutch people have a relatively higher long-term orientation than Spanish and French people. Particularly, Spanish people have a pretty low long-term orientation. That means when you manage Spanish employees, you need to make sure that they are satisfied with their job, with their pay in the short run. You cannot just promise something in the long term and then try to motivate them to work harder. That's the implication if you manage Spanish employees. Certainly, try to focus on the short-term rewards. But French people are probably a little more patient than Spanish people in terms of the long-term orientation. They might be willing to wait a little longer to get the reward they deserve. Now, I also added the scores of value, these value dimensions for China. If you compare China with these three European countries, you will find out China stands out as one category. For instance, in terms of power distance, the PDI, power distance score for China, is 80. It's far higher than the other three countries. That means Chinese people are more likely to respect the authority. They accept the power attached to their superior as legitimate. They are less likely to challenge the power of their manager. How about individualism? Here, you see another striking difference. Chinese people have the lowest level of individualism among these four countries. And it's far lower. The distance is big. That means if you manage the organization in China, you always need to keep the group in mind, because Chinese people are more likely to care about the benefits of the entire organization or the entire group. And therefore, when you reward people, you'd better reward the entire group rather than individuals. Then let's take a look at masculinity. Which country has the highest masculinity among these four? Does that surprise you? China has the highest level of masculinity. That means things like monetary compensation, advancement in career is very important for Chinese people. They would work hard if you give them opportunity to make more money or advance in their career. Maybe that explains why the economic growth in China has been so fast in the past 20 years. We don't know whether that's the decisive factor, but it must be one of the factors that drive Chinese people to economic prosperity. So it's not bad to be a masculine country, but there are also side effects, of course. When you care too much about the material satisfaction, people may forget about the quality of life, and they may start to ignore environmental protection because they want to maximize their profit. And therefore, the quality of life or the quality of the environment could suffer. And that's probably also what happened, the side effect of economic growth in China. That also has something to do with the high level of masculinity. Let's look at the uncertainty avoidance. Compared to European countries, guess what? Chinese people have the lowest level of uncertainty avoidance. They are risk takers. Well, probably you would not be surprised if you go to the stock market. When I lived in the United States, I went to Las Vegas, which is famous gamble city. I checked with those casinos, and I found out there are a lot of Asian customers, particularly Chinese. And I talked with the casino manager, and they confirmed that Chinese people like to gamble. But of course, it does not mean Chinese people really want to lose money in Las Vegas. They, of course, want to win money through the gamble, but they also feel confident that they can beat the game and win money with those casino games. But it's quite interesting. In Las Vegas, almost every casino has a Chinese restaurant. They have Chinese managers who can speak Mandarin or Cantonese, because they think that this is a very important customer group they cannot leave out. They want to attract even more Chinese customers to those casinos in Las Vegas. Of course, it could be negative or positive, but in this sense, if you take an economic perspective, risk-taking is good for economic growth. Finally, look at the last dimension, long-term orientation. Again, China ranked #1 in terms of long-term orientation compared to these 3 European countries. That means when you manage a Chinese organization, you need to pay even more attention to the long-term benefits for the individual employees and for the organization. Now, let's summarize what lessons that we have learned from this case. Well, first lesson that we have learned is a thorough understanding of the local culture is the key to success for international expansion. Initially, Bechtel made a mistake when they entered Spain. They thought they could follow a cookie-cutter approach, just bring the same management system from Holland to Spain, and they thought they could achieve the same kind of success, and they were wrong. They did not understand the local culture. But when they moved to France, enter the French market, they realized how important it is to understand the local culture. That's why they let Jim Perry to take over the chief executive's position. They let a French manager to manage their French subsidiary. They no longer thought about the possibility of sending a Dutch manager to France. That's the first lesson that we have learned. The second lesson is, in the food and beverage business, understanding the local market needs, trusting local managers, and maintaining local connections are particularly important when expanding into a foreign country. That's the reason why they retained Inter-HRC in France. They no longer made the mistake, because Inter-HRC did a lot of work for this company. It's more than just selling their beers to the French market. Because Inter-HRC has a direct connection with those hotels, restaurants, and catering services. They can provide the linkage between Bechtel and the French market customers. And of course, you need to trust those local managers. The Inter-HRC managers are, of course, local French. If, let's assume, the Dutch managers, the headquarter office, does not trust those Inter-HRC managers, they might suspect that they would collude with those restaurants to undercut the price or try to make the best deal and cut into the profit of the company. If they had that kind of suspicion, if they did not trust these French managers who run inter-HRC, they would not have been so successful in France. That's very obvious. So even though inter-HRC is just a distributor, it does not make a beer itself. It's just a marketer. It's very important for the success of Vectel. The third lesson is compared to language barriers, cultural barriers are even harder to overcome. Remember, when they acquired the Spanish subsidiary, they sent a Dutch manager over there. These people did not speak a Spanish language. But probably even worse than that is they did not want to understand the local culture. The fact is, even if they don't speak Spanish, if they appreciate the Spanish culture, they had a thorough understanding, thorough knowledge about the Spanish society and Spanish culture, they would not make so many mistakes. So conversely, imagine if they send some Dutch managers to Spanish, and these Dutch managers all speak fluent Spanish. Would that solve the problem? That would not solve the problem unless they had a real appreciation, real understanding of the Spanish culture. So even if those Dutch managers could speak a fluent Spanish language, it does not mean the cultural barrier would disappear. The cultural barrier would still be there, and they would still fail in managing that subsidiary. So that's something we need to keep in mind. You guys come to China to, of course, learn about Chinese business and learn some Chinese language. Maybe your Chinese language would never be as fluent as the local Chinese, but that's okay. It's more important that if you want to survive in the Chinese business community and have a career, successful career in China, understanding Chinese culture is even more important than learning Chinese language. Of course, learning Chinese language would help you understand the Chinese culture. They are kind of intertwined. By definition, keep in mind that language is a part of a culture, and a very important part of culture. When we learn about a nation's language, actually, we realize why they are spelled that way, why they are shaped that way. And there's a cultural reason, historical reason behind the language, the structure, why it's structured that way. So keep in mind, study hard for Chinese language, but study even harder for Chinese culture when you study here. The last lesson, but not the least important, is for expatriate managers working a multinational corporation, excellent cross-cultural communication skills are vital to their success. If you read the case description, you can find the detailed conversation between these two key persons, Jim Perry and Job Hamilton. What impression did you get? Probably the impression you get is both of them, they understand each other's background, understand each other's culture. And that's why they could finally successfully resolve the difference and collaborate with each other. Even so, as it's described in the case, initially Jim Perry Corbett was a little concerned that there would be some communication barrier between him and Job Hamilton. But of course, it turned out it was not the case. And once that barrier is overcome, they had no communication issue anymore. And they became very close partners, particularly for the acquisition of Schaefer. They work like a seamless team, even though one is French, one is Dutch. They could still work together because both of them have a very good cross-cultural communication skills. Okay, that concludes the case study for today. Any question or any comment? Or is there anything unclear to you in this case? Well, if not, thank you for your participation. Have a good day.
Thank you.